Resident Evil 4.
Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Resident Evil 4 Professional No Damage run. This is Chapter 5-4, this is the hardest chapter on the game. So if you've never played this game before, in this particular mission you are being supported by a helicopter pilot. Is he called Brad? I can't remember his name. And what he does is, he kills the zombies for you, he blows up the turrets for you, and he does it all incredibly competently, leaving you to essentially do nothing for the most of the level. It's quite climactic, it's an interesting change of pace, it was quite innovative at the time. On professional mode, they gave Brad cataracts. Cataracts and the worst aiming navigation system on the planet. What does this translate to? It translates to a sequence that on normal is completely unmemorable, to one on professional that is absolutely nightmarish. You have to do all the work here, and the worst part is, playing the game on anything but professional, you have never been shown or required to know how to do that. So this is hell. But luckily enough, this first massive firefight is not so bad. Aside from me trying to figure out how the hell I'm supposed to mess with that guy when I shot him in the face and clipping said no. So instead I come over here, I spawn these guys, and you can stand in here if you want to and kind of leapfrog between the ladder and the mantle point, but I don't recommend staying here for too long because I ended up getting hit way too much when I tried it. So my strategy is going to be incredibly cowardly but effective, and I have no qualms against doing it because I don't like this sequence, I don't think it's very fair. And that strategy is going to be as follows. I'm going to kill a ton of dudes, then I'm going to run back to the typewriter and I'm going to save. I'm going to kill a shit ton more dudes, and I'm going to run back to the typewriter and I'm going to save. I'm going to exploit the saving mechanic to artificially give me progress so that I don't have to spend too much time on this sequence. And it works sublimely. The only problem is, the final sequence and the hardest sequence, you cannot do that. And that is why this is really difficult, because doing this, anybody can do this. And I'd also like to point out, guys, that I could have trimmed this in such a way that it showed me never going back to the typewriter, and it would make me look like I'm hiding it from you, or I'm some kind of, you know, supremely good Resident Evil 4 player. That is not the case. As I discussed quite a lot in a previous video about, you know, trying to be honest with my content as much as possible, I'm going to tell you the strategies that work, and I'm going to tell you the strategies that I used. And there will be people, guaranteed, who think I'm a coward for doing that, who think that this is somehow not legit, or, you know, somehow inferior in however the ways, but those people are egomaniacs, they're the elitists, and this has never been a channel for that, folks, because I'm not a good enough player, I don't have that kind of dedication. Instead, I try my best to help people get through things that are quite difficult and show them some easy ways of doing it, and every so often I try to challenge myself, and that's exactly what this is. And it's tough. It's a tough challenge. But I will never protest to be the best. I will never be under the illusion of being the best. And people pointing out that people are better than me doesn't even phase into my mind, because it's never been about that. And I don't really guise myself against other players. If I was the type of person that looked at someone else's content and because it was better than mine didn't do anything, I would have never started a channel, I would have never made videos, and I would have quit day one. And people who are like that I feel sorry for, I really do, because you shouldn't really be thinking about, you know, it's all about being the best and the most supreme, and you should be really thinking about how can I be different, how can I entertain, and it all depends on what your motivation is, I guess. But this is a boring section, I'm not even going to mask it by saying it's anything but. When the chopper does its job, this is a really fun set piece. On professional, the chopper doesn't, and it just becomes a tirade of one mistake and I have to do 15 minutes worth of gameplay again, so I'm going to be really tentative and really nervous this entire time, and I don't enjoy that. I really don't. But it does give me a great opportunity to talk about some other stuff, because this is essentially kill them till they stop coming, and they never stop coming, it seems. It takes forever. I'm trying to trip a spawn here as well. That was the spawn. The reason that I backed up to it like I did is because there's archers, and the archers don't give you enough time to turn around and run away. They just hit you. Nothing you can do sometimes unless you run under them, and then you're dangerous because there's dynamite people. It's very tricky. And it has this amazing thing where you can't hit them, but they can hit you, and that is always frustrating in any game you can play. But let's talk about some of the tangents, because this is going to be tedious stuff here. Wonderful 101. There's something about this game, folks. If you've never seen it or you've never played it, I can't even get across in words just how special it feels. It feels like fun personified. And it's a fun that you don't even have to know what you're doing or be good at to get. And a lot of Platinum games, sometimes that's not immediately transferable. Like Bayonetta, I can understand being quite frustrating at first when you're just getting your ass beat. And I suppose that could translate to the Wonderful 101. But even then, when you're getting hurt and you're getting beat up, you can still feel like you're doing things that are really impressive when they're not. But it doesn't feel like it's pandering, and I think that's what's really good. It's just so strange. And I'm so bad at it, it's brilliant. But the boss fight I took on, I'll give you paint you a little picture. It was this giant dinosaur man who has a big sword. And for some reason, he got on this triple-headed dragon that looked like a combination of the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon and that Blue Eyes Mechanical Ultimate Dragon thing that they introduced on that random film that featured that random ghost who had that, what was it called, the Crystal Pyramid. It's been a while since I watched that movie, but it looked a bit like that shining Blue Eyes dragon with 3 heads, and it picks up a statue. And to stop it, the Wonderful 101 people get on their equivalent of the Enterprise. And from that moment onwards, you have to use the Unite Fist to steer the ship and shoot in kind of like a third-person Lilac Wars-esque shooter, which is kind of streamlined. And it's really epic and interesting, and you're dodging fire and stuff. There's a crossfade, trimming out, running all the way back, so you don't have to watch it a lot. And eventually, it gets to the point where you jump onto the dragon's wings. And when you're on the dragon's wings, you have to dodge these spiky things, and then you get to its back. And on its back, you fight it. It's 2 heads. They turn around. One of them is fire, one of them is ice. Very Fortitudo reminiscent in that respect. But the ice is kind of like a gunk, which you can trap your people in. And both of these heads are attacking you at the same time, and you're beating up the heads so that you can stun one of them and use something called Unite Build. The problem is, it's really hectic and chaotic, and it's really difficult to tell what's happening and how to dodge what's happening. Like, the physical attacks, as soon as you see them move from the signposting that they're going to attack you, if you do the Unite Guts, which is your defensive move, you can stop those pretty easily, and I'm fine with those. But the projectile stuff, I haven't a clue. Like, I know a projectile's coming, I know it's going to be a big laser beam, I try to run away from it, I do the coil evade, and I still get hit. So I'm obviously misunderstanding what I'm meant to do on that point, or just not very good yet. And the thing that's tricky is, they can hit your people, and it doesn't hurt you, because you're only penalised if they hit you. But when they hit your people, it lowers your amount of Wonderful 101 people, and that lowers your capacity to do everything. And if you don't have anybody, and you've been hit, this is what happens, it scatters your men, you have to pick them back up. And in that interlude of picking people back up, you don't have an evade, you don't have anything. So if you get hit, and you get punished really heavily, and there are times when I've been comboed when I'm in that state, and I didn't know what I was meant to do. You know, the only thing I could have done differently was not get hit. And at this moment in time, I'm not there. I'm nowhere near there yet. And then once you stun those things, there's this option to Unite Build, which is a little bit buggy. And I'm not saying that from a perspective of, you know, I tried it once and it didn't work. What happens is, you hold the analog towards a direction and your people fill it in. And I had it where I had 2 dudes still with me, and they wouldn't fill in the final part of it. And then I got hit by the boss, and it scattered all my men, and I arranged them again. I did exactly what he'd asked, and these 2 guys would not do it. And I tried moving the analog, I tried a whole bunch of stuff. It didn't register at all, and I ended up dying. And it was really frustrating. And when I continued and I fought again, the very first time when I stunned it, all my men did the build option and everything worked perfectly, but for some reason that there was other, 5 or 6 attempts, there was 2 people who wouldn't join the build to complete it. And I'm hoping once again it's me at that point. I'm hoping I don't quite know the nuance of the inputs yet, but it felt really annoying when I was trying to do it, because I knew I was doing something wrong, I knew something wasn't registering, and I just didn't know how to fix it. But once you do that, the guy turns up with the sword and he starts fighting you. And this dude is crazy, man. I have no idea how to fight him. It seems like you have to hit him until he blocks and then break his sword. And one of the times, I was able to hit him with a couple of Unite swords, and then I would use my, I think it's X, it should be fucking Y. The pad is so drunk, they've messed the buttons around, I hate the buttons. But you use triangle, there we go, everybody knows what triangle means. And your men attack, and they do like a stun move. And on this one attempt, it broke his sword and stunned him. And then I launched him, and when I launch enemies, I'm comfortable then. You know, I send my team to do a sword attack, I turn into a sword, so we both hit them with the swords, and, you know, as my sword attack's finishing, I'll do the circle for the fist, and then I'll hit them with the fist, and then I'll send the, you know, the team to do the gun attack while I'm doing the fist attack, and I generally can do some, you know, really good hits and combos, but getting to that point is really tricky, and I ended up dying against him. So when I started again, I had no idea how to replicate that move. So I hit him, he started blocking, I tried the stun attack, it did nothing. He just didn't break his sword, he just took it and ended up countering me. And the thing that confuses me the most with the humanoids in particular is you don't know what moves to block and which ones to avoid. You have to learn them. It's one of those things where some attacks you can seem to use the guts against, but others it doesn't work. And every so often there's a move that you know you can use guts against, but you still get hit. And I don't know if that's a timing thing. Like I say, I'm so new to this game. I've been playing it for about an hour. But there's a lot of things happening. And once you beat him up, it gets to this next phase where you're on a floating platform and the dragons are attacking you, because it's super crazy this entire time. And if you use the hand, you can throw these propane tanks at this boss, but then the boss comes up to you on this platform and it's charging, it's telegraphing this massive attack, and it's obviously, you know, something's going to happen. But what the fuck are you meant to do? I just didn't understand it at all. And I looked all across this platform to see if I could jump away, because I thought, you know, it's going to break this platform and I can jump away to safety, but there was no prompt, there was no hero jump or whatever it's called. So I thought, let's try the defensive Unite Guts. Didn't matter, I got hit and it did this screen that looked like it was game over, but it just reset me back on the platform. And then it started again, and it started doing this move, so, you know, what options did I have left? Let's try to avoid it. I waited at the last possible instance, I pressed avoid, I got hit. And it was just this weird thing of, this is really strange, I'm clearly doing something wrong. And I finally took his life down, and it got to the next phase of the fight. And this phase was the sword guy on the dragon flying towards me, and I was on a platform. And at first I thought I had to just Unite Guts this boss, because it slowed time as he got close to you and he's swinging a sword. So I tried to time it really well, didn't work. Tried to avoid it, worked perfectly, but didn't hurt him. Tried shooting him with the gun, didn't really do too much, and then I thought maybe I have to clang swords with him by using Unite Sword, and lo and behold, that's exactly what I had to do. But every other instance in this game of clanging with, like, Unite Sword to reflect the lasers and Unite Gun to suck the bombs up had no timing involved at all. But this sword maneuver, there was timing, because there was times when I would do it and he'd just break my sword and hit me, and it wasn't my sword wearing out because they have a time limit on them. It was just I timed it poorly, and in the end I had to wait until, you know, like a pretty precise timing to initiate the sword to deflect him properly. And this entire time, the game isn't telling you anything, which is a double-sided sword, because I love the fact it's trusting the gamer to learn it by trial and error and by playing, but every so often you need a tutorial, you need a pop-up, you need something to tell us what we're doing wrong, because it can be really frustrating. And this game has no instruction manual. All the instructions you can find are in the menus by reading, but it's one of those things where sometimes there's just no real idea what it expects from you, and it's super confusing. But that's not a bad thing, that's just my unfamiliarity, that's a strange word, my unfamiliarity with the game, which once I'm familiar with it, you know, will not be a problem, but right now, it's it's a hard game to begin with, and it's harder even more so because instead of, you know, knowing what I'm doing and the hard thing being doing it, I'm not knowing what I'm doing, and the hard thing is still doing it. So it's this culmination of this wonderful struggle, essentially. But it's really fun too, and I know that everything that's happening is entirely my fault. The only one niggle I've got is the camera, and I'll talk about that when we have another down period, because the next one, kind of an important video. This next part sucks. But thank you very much for listening. I hope if you've never heard of Wonderful 101, you'll go check it out to hear what the hell I was just talking about. But as always, you take care now.